Have you ever walked into a room and felt eyes peeling you apart before you've said a word? That's exactly what it felt like when Jasmine Crockett stepped into the lobby of Hensley and Griggs, one of the most respected law firms in Washington, D.C. She walked into a top D.C. law firm wearing gym clothes. The receptionist laughed at her, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. 5 minutes later, the entire room was dead silent. She walked into a top D.C. law firm wearing gym clothes. The receptionist laughed at her, loud enough for the whole lobby to hear. 5 minutes later, the entire room was dead silent. Have you ever walked into a room and felt eyes peeling you apart before you've said a word? That's exactly what it felt like when Jasmine Crockett stepped into the lobby of Hensley and Griggs, one of the most respected law firms in Washington, D.C. It was just past 8:30 on a Thursday morning. The marble floors gleamed like they'd been licked clean. The receptionist's desk sat squarely in the middle of the entrance, flanked by two oversized planters and a spread of leather armchairs already half filled with clients waiting to be seen. Jasmine wasn't dressed for business. She wore a loose gray hoodie, black leggings, and running shoes still a little dusty from the sidewalk. Her braids were pulled back in a ponytail. No makeup, no jewelry. Just a small leather bag slung over her shoulder. She looked like any woman stopping by somewhere quickly before going home to shower. Savannah, the receptionist, didn't even bother to hide her look. She glanced up, blinked once, and immediately typed something on her keyboard. Then she looked back at Jasmine, almost confused, like she couldn't understand why someone like that would walk in through their front door. "Hi," Jasmine said simply, walking up to the desk. Savannah gave her a tight, fake smile. "Uh-huh. You here to drop something off?" Her voice had that rehearsed tone, flat with a layer of condescension, like she thought she was being polite, but didn't care enough to hide how annoyed she was. "No, Jasmine replied calmly. I have a meeting. Should be under Crockett." Savannah's eyebrows lifted a little. She didn't check the calendar, didn't type anything, just kept looking at Jasmine like she was trying to place her. "You sure it's here?" she asked, cocking her head. "We don't really do walk-ins." "I didn't walk in," Jasmine said a little firmer. "I have a scheduled meeting with Ellis Griggs." That name should have made the receptionist pause. Ellis Griggs wasn't just any partner. He was one of the founders. His calendar didn't fill with casual chats, but Savannah still didn't move. She muttered, drawing out the sound. "Well, you can take a seat, and I'll figure it out." Jasmine held her gaze for a second longer, then turned toward the chairs. A man in a navy suit glanced up from his phone. A woman across from him shifted uncomfortably in her heels. No one said anything, but everyone heard the tone Savannah had used. As Jasmine sat, Savannah leaned slightly toward her coworker beside her and said just loud enough, "If she's a new client, someone's definitely lowering the bar around here." The coworker didn't respond, but the man in the suit smirked. Jasmine heard it, every word, but she didn't flinch. She just crossed one leg over the other, pulled out her phone, and started scrolling. Calm, collected, quiet. It wasn't the first time someone had judged her by her outfit or her skin or the fact that she didn't announce who she was the moment she walked in. It wouldn't be the last. But that didn't mean it didn't burn a little, because it wasn't just the receptionist. It was the way the entire room changed, how quickly people think they've figured you out, how fast assumptions get made, and how comfortable they're making them. But she didn't come here to argue. She came here to talk business. Big business. And in less than 5 minutes, the entire office would see exactly who they were ignoring. But Savannah wasn't done yet. And that's where things were about to get really uncomfortable. Savannah leaned back in her chair like she'd done her job for the day. She twirled her pen between two fingers, eyes drifting to the security camera monitor beside her keyboard. From time to time, she glanced toward Jasmine, still seated, still quiet, still scrolling her phone. The moment dragged. A woman in a green blazer walked in next, and Savannah's tone flipped like a switch. "Good morning. Welcome to Hensley and Griggs. Do you have an appointment?" The woman smiled, gave her name, and Savannah offered her water, then personally walked her to the elevator. As she returned, she threw another glance toward Jasmine. This time, it was more amused than confused. "She's still here," Savannah whispered to her coworker, not even trying to lower her voice fully. I really hope she's not here for an interview. That's just awkward. Her coworker, an intern named Bradley, winced slightly, but said nothing. He stared harder at his screen, pretending to be focused. The man in the suit across from Jasmine chuckled under his breath. Jasmine didn't look up, but she heard it. Another 10 minutes went by. The waiting area got fuller. Every time the elevator pinged, people looked up. Everyone except Jasmine, who remained still, one leg crossed, her phone placed on her lap. Finally, Bradley leaned toward Savannah. You didn't check the calendar at all. Savannah raised an eyebrow. She said she was meeting with Ellis. If that were true, she'd be on the list, right? He didn't respond, but the tension between them was starting to grow. Then came the real kicker. Savannah picked up the desk phone and called someone in HR, her voice overly casual, laced with sarcasm. Hey, quick question. Do we have anyone scheduled for a walk-in today, or like a visitor drop-off or something? Uh-huh. Yeah, she's just been sitting here a while. MHM. No, I don't think she's a client. She didn't say. Jasmine looked up at that moment, locking eyes with her. Nothing said, just a stare. Calm, patient, but razor-sharp. Savannah offered a tight smile and hung up. I'm just doing my job, she muttered under her breath, pretending Jasmine couldn't hear. A young man, probably a paralegal, came into the lobby with a stack of case folders. He saw Jasmine, froze for a second, then blinked hard. Recognition. He opened his mouth like he was going to say something, but Savannah cut in fast. Don't worry. She's waiting, she said sharply. Not for you. The paralegal hesitated, looked back at Jasmine, then disappeared down the hall. The entire room was now part of this tension, silent, watching. Jasmine looked at her phone, then stood up, calmly walked toward the desk again. She wasn't angry, not loud, no voice raised. I'm going to ask you one more time, she said gently. Please check the calendar for an appointment under Jasmine Crockett. Savannah sighed, finally typing something into the computer, mostly for show. The screen lit up, her eyes scanned the list, and that's when her whole body locked. There it was. Jasmine Crockett, 9 a.m. confirmed. Meeting with Ellis Griggs. Location, Executive Suite, 23rd floor. Duration, 90 minutes. She froze, then tried to recover. Oh, okay. I see it now. Sorry. The system must have glitched earlier, but it was too late. People had heard. Bradley's face turned red. The man in the navy suit suddenly looked very busy with his phone. Before Savannah could say more, the elevator doors opened and out walked Ellis Griggs himself. He was a tall man in his 60s with silver-framed glasses and a deep voice that carried weight. His eyes scanned the room and lit up the second he saw her. Congresswoman Crockett, he called out, opening his arms wide. I was wondering if you got caught in traffic. Savannah's mouth opened, but no words came out. Jasmine gave a soft smile, walked past the desk, and greeted him like an old friend. Sorry for the wait, she said, her voice smooth. I had a little confusion at check-in. Griggs looked over at Savannah, then back at Jasmine. Let's get upstairs, he said, motioning to the elevator. We've got a lot to talk about. But what was said upstairs wasn't nearly as loud as the silence left behind in that lobby. The elevator doors closed behind them with a quiet thump. Inside, Griggs chuckled softly. I'm sorry about that, Jasmine. This firm is sharp in court, but let's just say not everyone at the front desk is caught up with how the world works. Jasmine shook her head, still calm. It's fine. Happens more than you'd think. People are quicker to judge than they are to listen. Griggs gave a half nod. Still, you shouldn't have been left sitting. You got a resume that should make people stand when you enter a room, no matter what you're wearing. She smiled at that, but there was weight behind her silence. On the 23rd floor, they walked into a sleek, glass-walled conference room. Two assistants were already setting up water, notepads, and printouts. A massive flat screen displayed the agenda. Community Infrastructure Grant Expansion Proposal, Q3 Review. This wasn't a light meet and greet. They were about to shape the flow of federal dollars across several states, unlocking funds for underserved neighborhoods, and potentially laying groundwork for future legislation. Jasmine wasn't here for small talk. She was here to get things done. For the next hour, her voice commanded the room. She broke down cost efficiency with clarity. She flagged legal loopholes in current language. She didn't speak over people, but they quieted when she started. Even the senior partners, folks who usually steamrolled through smaller meetings, leaned in. The younger associates who had been invited to observe watched in something close to awe. And all the while, Jasmine stayed in her same gym outfit. No blazer, no heels, just sharp thinking, grounded values, and a clear sense of self. Griggs sat back at one point watching her, not just her ideas, but how the room moved around her. You know, he said mid-discussion, every time we have one of these sessions, I walk away seeing things from a whole new angle. Jasmine gave a small smile. That's what happens when you stop assuming who someone is before you hear what they have to say. He didn't argue. Outside the boardroom, news had already traveled fast. Savannah had seen the name on the screen. She'd watched Ellis greet her like a VIP. She heard him call her Congresswoman. And now she was pacing behind the desk, hands fidgeting, eyes darting every time someone walked by. Bradley wasn't talking to her. The man in the navy suit had long since left, awkwardly mumbling a goodbye. The energy had shifted completely. Worse, two junior associates had come down to the lobby for coffee. They stopped short when they saw Savannah. "Is that the same woman from earlier?" one of them whispered. Savannah caught it, and that whisper stuck harder than anything else. Inside, Jasmine finished her last point, outlining a new plan to pilot in small cities like Pueblo, Colorado, and Lancaster, Pennsylvania, where economic revitalization could thrive with smart infrastructure support. Griggs stood, extended a hand, and thanked her, not with empty praise, but genuine respect. "You're a force, Jasmine," he said, "not just because of your title, but because you actually show up. You don't need a suit to prove anything." She shook his hand firmly. "Sometimes the best way to test a room," she said, "is to walk in without announcing yourself." They shared a nod, mutual understanding. As they stepped out of the conference room, the elevator was already waiting. Jasmine didn't speak until the doors opened. She turned slightly to Griggs. "Mind if I stop back by the lobby before I go?" He smiled. "I was hoping you would. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about what people remember long after the room clears out." The ride down was quiet, but not the kind of silence that hangs heavy. It was focused. Jasmine stood still, hands in her pockets, staring at the numbers as they dropped from 23 to L. Griggs stood beside her, arms folded, watching her with quiet admiration. When the doors opened, the lobby was busier than before. A few new clients had arrived, standing near the reception desk with confused looks. Savannah was mid-sentence, flipping through a clipboard and trying her best to look composed. Then she saw Jasmine. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. Jasmine stepped out slowly, taking her time, not rushing like someone eager to leave. She scanned the room. Some people looked away. Others pretended to be on their phones. Bradley, still behind the desk, straightened his posture and gave a nervous smile. Savannah forced her voice into a polite register. Congresswoman Crockett, did you need something else before you go?" Her voice cracked slightly on Congresswoman. Jasmine paused at the edge of the reception desk, just a few feet from her. "I don't need anything," she said, "but I wanted to leave something behind." Savannah blinked. Jasmine's eyes moved across the room, making sure people were listening. After a purposeful beat, she spoke clearly, softly, but with undeniable weight. "Next time someone walks through those doors, whether they look like they came from a boardroom or a bus stop, assume they belong. Because the way you greet people says more about you than it ever will about them." That was it. No raised voice, no sarcasm, no personal attack, just the truth delivered in a way that left no room for misunderstanding. The silence in the room now was a different kind, more awkward, more revealing. Savannah opened her mouth again, maybe to apologize, maybe to defend herself, but Jasmine was already turning. She headed toward the glass doors with calm, deliberate steps. Every inch of her walk proclaimed that she didn't need anyone in that lobby to validate her. She already knew who she was. Griggs followed a few steps behind, watching as she pushed the door open and stepped out into the bright DC sunlight. Behind them, Bradley leaned toward Savannah without looking at her. "You didn't know who she was," he said under his breath. "But you didn't have to treat her like that." Savannah didn't respond. A few minutes later, One of the junior attorneys came down with a copy of the morning's meeting summary and paused at the desk. "She's the one behind the funding plan, right?" he asked. Savannah nodded silently. "She's brilliant," he muttered. "I sat in on that meeting. It changed the whole tone." Then he walked off. Savannah sank back in her chair. Her confidence, the very same confidence that had allowed her to speak loud enough to humiliate someone, was nowhere to be found. She stared at the computer screen, but her hands didn't move. No one said it to her face, but something had fundamentally shifted. She could feel it. And perhaps the worst part wasn't that she had embarrassed herself. It was that she had done it without even realizing who she was talking to, because she had never given that person the benefit of curiosity. She had made a snap decision based on a hoodie and sneakers. She assumed, and now that assumption sat on her like a stone. But the story wasn't over. Not until Jasmine walked back in one more time. Late afternoon sunlight streamed across the sidewalk outside Hensley and Griggs as the workday slowed. The building's glass doors hadn't seen Jasmine Crockett in hours. Most thought she'd gone on with her day, meetings stacked back to back the way most congresswomen live. But just after 3:15 p.m., she came back. This time, she wasn't alone. She walked in beside a woman in a tailored navy skirt suit. They spoke softly as they approached the desk. No gym clothes now. Jasmine wore a long black coat over a sleek dress. Her braids were pulled into a tight bun. Clean, elegant, but still unmistakably her. Savannah looked up. Her mouth moved slightly, trying to land on the right words, but Jasmine didn't slow down. She wasn't here for a reunion. She stopped a few feet from the desk, pulled something from her coat pocket, and handed it to Bradley. It was a sealed envelope. "Can you give that to Mr. Griggs?" she asked, calm as ever. Bradley took it carefully. Of course, he's still upstairs. Savannah sat rigid in her chair. She opened her mouth, searching for something, an apology, maybe, but Jasmine looked at her just once. No smile, no frown, just a still face and sharp eyes. Savannah cleared her throat. "I didn't realize earlier. I should have. You should have just treated me like a person," Jasmine said, her voice steady, low enough that only Savannah could hear. Savannah swallowed hard. "You're right." Jasmine turned to go, but something pulled her back. She looked at the waiting area. New people sat in the chairs, but the energy felt different, less smug, more alert. They had seen her now, not just the title, but the person. She faced Savannah again, not angry, just firm. Respect isn't about who someone is. It's about who you are. Savannah blinked fast. Her throat moved like she wanted to reply, but she didn't. Jasmine turned and left. As the door closed behind her, the air didn't exactly shift. It tightened. The weight of what had happened that morning, what had been said and what had not been said, stayed behind like smoke. Bradley looked over at Savannah. "She didn't come back to make a scene," he said. "She came back to make sure you remembered." Savannah sat still, her hands flat against the counter. "Yeah," she whispered. "I got that." Upstairs, Ellis Griggs read the envelope. Inside was a handwritten thank you note. "Appreciate the work," it read. "Looking forward to seeing progress where it counts. Let's make sure respect isn't just part of policy, it's part of people." Griggs sat back in his chair, smiling slightly. Meanwhile, back downstairs, a middle-aged man in worn jeans walked up to the reception desk with a file folder in hand. Savannah looked up, and for the first time that day, she really looked. "Good afternoon," she said quietly. "How can I help you?" But sometimes the real change isn't in the words. It's in the pause that happens before you speak them. For the rest of the day, Savannah barely spoke. She went through the motions, answering phones, printing passes, smiling when she had to. But something inside her wouldn't quiet down. Not shame exactly, and not fear either, just a sharp, steady discomfort that settled in her gut and refused to leave. Every time the door opened, she checked herself. Was she about to misjudge someone again? Was her voice going to carry the same snap it did that morning? And if it did, who else might she be missing? Around 5:20, just before closing, Griggs came down. He didn't say a word at first, just placed his coffee mug on the counter and looked at her, not harsh, not friendly, just knowing. "You've had a long day," he said eventually. Savannah nodded. "Yes, sir." He tapped his fingers on the edge of the desk. "I've worked with a lot of people in my time. Smart ones, fast ones, folks who can spot a detail in a document from 20 feet away. He paused. But the ones who last, they're the ones who know how to read a room. Not just judge it, read it. Savannah swallowed. I understand, she said quietly. I hope you do, Griggs replied. Then he walked away, mug in hand. A few of the associates filed past, most of them not saying anything. Some looked at her, others didn't. But no one joked near the front desk, not like earlier. The air had thinned out like the building itself had taken a breath. When Savannah finally clocked out and stepped into the cold evening air, she felt something she couldn't quite name. She crossed the parking lot slower than usual. Her car felt colder, quieter, but her mind was louder. All day, she prided herself on being professional, on maintaining control at the front. But professionalism without empathy was just ego in a suit. She hadn't just been rude. She'd spoken to someone as if their worth depended on her approval. And the most humiliating part, that someone hadn't even needed to raise her voice to make it known. Jasmine Crockett had handled it with poise, dignity. No grand speech, just presence. And presence had a way of saying more than any performance ever could. At home that night, Savannah pulled out her laptop and searched Jasmine's name. The articles came fast. Legislation, interviews, community events. There was one from a few years back about her sleeping in her office to stay close to her work. Another showed her speaking at a town hall, holding her own against a room full of doubters. Savannah stared at the screen. This wasn't just someone with power. This was someone who had earned it every step of the way. Someone who probably got dismissed like that more times than anyone could count and still showed up, still delivered, still led. The next morning, Savannah arrived early. She straightened the desk, wiped the counter twice, and pulled up the calendar before the lobby filled. She made eye contact with every person who walked in. Didn't assume, didn't guess. She asked questions. She listened. And when someone came in wearing a hoodie and beat-up sneakers, she didn't blink, just smiled and said, "Welcome. How can I help you?" She didn't recognize the man. She didn't need to, because the lesson Jasmine left behind wasn't about celebrity. It was about value. How you treat people when you think no one's watching. That's the real test of character. And that morning, Savannah took her first honest swing at passing it. Let this be a powerful reminder. Titles don't make people important. Respect does. This story isn't just about an encounter. It's a profound illustration of how small acts of judgment can have large, lasting consequences, and how genuine character can quietly reshape an entire environment. It highlights the often overlooked power of human connection and the silent lessons that stay with us long after a conversation ends.